Rosalind, first of all, when you look at what the New York Times published, in relation to President Trump's taxes, do we know if there's any wrongdoing here?
It's very hard to say, and these tax returns, these tax details are from an earlier period, 1985 to 1994. As you said, they possibly raised doubts about the president's claim to be the best salesman and businessman of all time, given the extent of the losses that are being reported. But the key battlefield is actually his more recent returns. They're the ones that the Democrats are trying to get released. They're the ones that the US Treasury Secretary is saying he will not release, and they're from the most recent period of 6 years. And they're the ones that perhaps matter the most for Congress at the moment. The question also is how much the public really cares.
Yeah.
And we do have surveys showing that around 50% of voters believe that they would like to see the returns. How many of those are in his base is another question. The US president himself, he says that not only are the returns not really understandable for most people, but even if they were released and they were understandable, people simply wouldn't care.
If you look at the two parties, because we're close to the presidential elections, or certainly we're in the full campaigning for the presidential election, does it hurt one party more than the other?
Well, the debate over the tax returns certainly is something the Democrats are using to try and get leverage. But a bit like the campaign to get the full unredacted Robert Mueller report released to the panel and possibly to use the question of subpoenas for the Attorney General. These are all things that are tying Congress in knots. How much they matter on the campaign trail as the Democrats get into the primary season is another question.
So if the Democrats, do hold William Barr in contempt for missing the subpoena deadline, does it play into the Republicans' hands?
Well, that is possibly the Republican argument. They're certainly digging in Congress, and the idea is the more it goes on in Congress and the nastier the fight gets, the possibility of a more of a sympathy vote, if something for the US president, may increase. They're showing him as being under siege. They're saying, as far as we're concerned, this is all done. It's signed off. We're moving on. But the Democrats won't let us move on, and they won't let us move on in a way that's important for the economy, for jobs, for healthcare. That, at the least, is the Republican argument.